They say the people closest to you can be your biggest critics or your greatest champions. In my case, they managed to be both, just at different times. 5 years ago, I was sitting at my parents' dining table, enduring another round of well-intentioned mockery about my cute little plant project. Today, those same family members occupy the executive suite of EcoBloom's headquarters, helping me run what Forbes recently called the fastest-growing sustainable home goods company of the decade. Life has a funny way of coming full circle. But let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about proving people wrong. It's about vision, persistence, and how sometimes the ideas that get laughed at the most end up changing everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm Rebecca Mitchell, but everyone calls me Becca. 5 years ago, I was 32 years old with a marketing degree gathering dust while I worked at a corporate job I hated, creating campaigns for products I didn't believe in. Every morning, I'd stand on my apartment balcony, tending to my flourishing container garden, the only thing that brought me real joy in those days. My tiny apartment in Portland was overflowing with plants. Friends joked that I was running an unauthorized greenhouse. What they didn't know was that my plant obsession had become my escape from corporate disillusionment and was slowly transforming into something much bigger. It started simply enough. Living in a small urban apartment with no yard, I'd developed an innovative vertical gardening system that maximized growing potential in minimal space. Using recycled materials and my own organic soil mixture, I'd created something that allowed anyone, regardless of space limitations, to grow their own food. My friends were impressed. My coworkers started asking me to make systems for them. But my family? They saw it as just another one of Becca's phases. I remember the exact moment when everything changed. It was during one of our mandatory Sunday dinners at my parents' house in the suburbs. My older brother David, the golden child with his successful construction company, was holding court as usual. "So Becca's got herself another hobby," he announced with a smirk, cutting into his roast beef. "She's playing with dirt and selling fancy planters now." "They're self-sustaining organic growing systems," I corrected, feeling my cheeks flush. "I'm calling the company EcoBloom." "EcoBloom," my father repeated, exchanging a glance with David. "Honey, that's a lovely name, but don't you think you should focus on your actual career? Johnson & Morris is a prestigious firm." My mother reached over to pat my hand. "Your apartment looks like a jungle, sweetheart. Maybe scale back a bit? All those plants can't be healthy." "Actually," I said, sitting straighter, "I've already sold 50 units through the farmer's market. I'm looking at renting a small production space next month." The skeptical silence that followed was broken by my younger sister Emma's laughter. "Remember when you were going to start a bakery? Or that clothing line? Dad, do we still have those hideous scarves in the attic?" I took a long sip of water, swallowing my embarrassment along with it. They weren't entirely wrong. I had started and abandoned projects before. But this was different. I could feel it. "This isn't just some whim," I said quietly. "People are increasingly disconnected from their food. Urban dwellers want to grow their own produce but lack the space and knowledge. I'm solving a real problem." David leaned back in his chair, that familiar condescending smile playing at his lips. "Well, when you're ready to join the real business world, let me know. Mitchell Construction always needs good marketing people." I felt something shift inside me at that moment. A quiet resolve hardened into determination. They didn't see it. But EcoBloom wasn't just about planters or soil. It was about reconnecting people with sustainable living in urban environments, and I was done seeking their approval. The next morning, I submitted my 2-week notice at Johnson & Morris. My supervisor was shocked. "You're leaving to sell plant boxes?" she asked, bewildered. "Becca, you're on track for senior management. This is career suicide. I prefer to think of it as career rebirth, I replied with more confidence than I felt. Those first few months were a blur of activity. I rented a tiny workshop space in a rundown industrial district, all I could afford after depleting my savings. Every morning, I'd arrive at 5 a.m. to build growing systems before heading to the farmers markets on weekends. Evenings were spent developing my website, researching sustainable materials, and refining my soil blends. My first real breakthrough came at the Portland Sustainable Living Expo. I'd scraped together enough money for a small booth, hoping to make connections with local retailers. My display was modest compared to the professional setups around me, but my growing systems, with their lush vegetables and herbs flourishing under the expo center lights, drew consistent crowds. "Impressive setup," said a woman who'd been observing my demonstration for several minutes. She was sharply dressed, with an air of authority that made me stand straighter. "Most urban gardening solutions I've seen are either ineffective or an eyesore. Yours are actually beautiful." "Thank you," I replied, handing her my business card, printed on seed paper that could be planted after use. The aesthetics were important to me. People won't keep something visible in their home if it's ugly, no matter how functional. She studied the card, then met my eyes with an appraising look. "I'm Sofia Rodriguez. I own Verde Living. We have eco-friendly home goods stores in Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver." My heart skipped. Verde Living was exactly the kind of high-end retailer I'd dreamed of partnering with. "I'd like to see more," she continued. "Do you have a proper business plan? Production capacity details? Cost analysis?" I hesitated. My business plan existed mostly in scattered notes and Excel spreadsheets. "I'm still formalizing some of those elements," I admitted. Rather than the dismissal I expected, Sophia handed me her card. "I see potential here, Rebecca. Real potential. But potential without structure doesn't scale. Call my office on Monday. I might be able to help." That card sat on my workbench all weekend while I alternated between excitement and terror. Sofia Rodriguez was known for mentoring female entrepreneurs, but she was also known for her exacting standards. By Monday morning, I'd convinced myself the encounter had been a courtesy, nothing more. But when I finally gathered the courage to call, her assistant immediately put me through. "I've been researching you," Sophia said without preamble. "You have no business background, limited capital, and you're trying to enter a competitive market. On paper, you should fail." My stomach sank. "But," she continued, "your product is exceptional. Your customer reviews are glowing, and you've managed to create actual demand with virtually no marketing budget. That's impressive." She paused. "I'm hosting a dinner for some investors next Thursday. Bring your prototypes, whatever business documentation you have, and be prepared to answer hard questions." "Can you do that?" "Absolutely," I replied, already mentally canceling the few social plans I had that week. This was the opportunity I needed. The dinner was held at Sophia's stunning Pearl District loft. I arrived early, setting up a small display of my latest growing systems in her kitchen. A 3-tiered herb garden already sprouting basil and cilantro, and my newest design, a wall-mounted vegetable system with integrated water recycling. As guests arrived, mostly investors and business owners Sophia had worked with, I felt painfully out of place in my one good blazer. These were people who discussed millions in funding over appetizers, while I'd been celebrating $500 days at the farmer's market. When Sophia introduced me, describing EcoBloom as the future of urban agriculture, I saw the skepticism in some faces, the same look my family had given me around the dinner table. But this time, instead of shrinking from it, I channeled my nervousness into passion. I walked them through the problems of urban food deserts, disconnection from food sources, and sustainability challenges. Then I demonstrated how my systems address these issues while being beautiful, affordable, and user-friendly even for gardening novices. By the time I finished my impromptu presentation, the energy had shifted. Questions came rapid-fire, not dismissive but curious, probing, interested. A venture capitalist named James asked about scaling potential. A retail expert named May wanted to know about manufacturing capacity. These weren't the polite inquiries of people humoring Sophia's new project. They were the engaged questions of potential partners. After the guests left, Sophia poured us both a glass of wine. "You have something special here, Rebecca, but you're thinking too small." "Too small?" I laughed. "I'm working 16-hour days just to keep up with current orders." "Exactly my point. You're stuck in production mode when you should be in expansion mode." She pulled out a notepad and began writing. "You need operating capital, manufacturing partnerships, proper business structure, and a strategic growth plan." She slid the notepad toward me. On it was a number that made my eyes widen: $250,000. "Angel investment," she said. 15% equity stake. I'll connect you with my lawyer to draw up proper terms." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My production consultant to establish manufacturing protocols, and my marketing team to refine your brand identity. I stared at the number, then at her. "Why?" I finally managed. "Because 15 years ago, I was you," she said simply. "With a different product but the same fire. Someone took a chance on me then. I'm taking a chance on you now." That night, driving back to my apartment, I felt both exhilarated and terrified. This wasn't just about proving my family wrong anymore. Real money, real expectations, real potential for both spectacular success and humiliating failure now rode on EcoBloom. The next Sunday dinner at my parents' house was tense. I'd been conspicuously absent from family gatherings for weeks, buried in work preparing for this expansion. "So," my father began cautiously, "how's the plant business going?" I took a deep breath. "I've secured angel investment. EcoBloom is officially incorporating next week. We're leasing a production facility in the industrial district and hiring our first employees." The silence that followed was deafening. David was the first to recover. "Angel investment? How much are we talking about here, Becca? A few $1,000s?" $250,000, I said, trying not to savor the shock on his face too visibly. "With potential for second-round funding if we hit our 6-month targets." My mother dropped her fork. "But that's more than David got for starting Mitchell Construction. It's a different market," I said diplomatically, though I couldn't help but notice how David's jaw tightened. "Sustainable home goods are projected to be a $30 billion industry by next year. Who in their right mind would invest that kind of money in plant boxes?" David scoffed, but I could hear the edge in his voice. "Sophia Rodriguez," I replied, dropping the name deliberately. Everyone in Portland business circles knew Verde Living's success story. For the first time in my adult life, I saw something new in my family's eyes when they looked at me. Not just surprise, but a flicker of respect. It was intoxicating. The next 6 months were the most challenging of my life. With Sophia's guidance, EcoBloom transformed from my one-woman operation into a real company. We leased a 5,000-square-foot production facility. I hired 4 full-time employees, specialists in carpentry, horticulture, and fulfillment. Our product line expanded from the original growing systems to include specialized soil blends, organic seeds, and maintenance tools. Sales grew steadily. Verde Living placed our products in all 3 of their locations. 5 other boutique retailers followed suit. Our online store, professionally rebuilt with Sophia's marketing team's help, saw traffic increase tenfold. But success brought new challenges: production delays, supply chain issues, the constant pressure to maintain quality while scaling up. More than once, I found myself on my workshop floor at midnight, helping to fulfill orders that our small team couldn't handle alone. "You can't keep doing everything yourself," Sophia warned during one of our weekly strategy sessions. "You need to delegate, build systems, trust your team." "I know," I sighed, rubbing my tired eyes. "But it's my name on the product, my reputation. And now it's your job to be the visionary, not the worker bee," she replied firmly. "Hire a production manager. Yesterday." She was right, of course. The next week, I brought on Marcus, an operations specialist with experience in sustainable manufacturing. He immediately identified inefficiencies I'd been too close to see. By our 1-year anniversary, EcoBloom had grown to 15 employees. We'd expanded distribution to 27 retail locations across the Pacific Northwest. Our custom subscription service, delivering seasonal seed packets, specialized nutrients, and maintenance supplies to growing system owners, was generating steady recurring revenue. And then came the call that would change everything again. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when my assistant told me David was on the line. My brother and I had maintained a strained politeness at family gatherings, but he hadn't once visited EcoBloom or shown genuine interest in my success. "Becca," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "do you have time to grab coffee this week?" We met at a cafe halfway between our businesses. David looked tired, the confidence that had always seemed permanently etched into his features notably dimmed. "Mitchell Construction is in trouble," he admitted after awkward small talk. "The high-end residential market is collapsing. 3 major clients have pulled out of projects in the last month. We're bleeding cash." I waited, unsure why he was telling me this. "I've been watching what you're doing," he continued. "The sustainability angle. The way you've positioned EcoBloom not just as products but as a lifestyle. It's impressive." Coming from David, this was tantamount to a standing ovation. "I've been thinking," he said, staring into his coffee. "Mitchell Construction has expertise in building high-quality structures. You need production capacity for your growing systems. Maybe there's a partnership opportunity." I nearly choked on my latte. "You want to partner with EcoBloom, the plant box company?" He winced at having his dismissive words thrown back at him. "I deserve that. But yes, I'm serious. We could convert part of our workshop to produce your systems at a scale you can't currently achieve. Our client connections could open doors to commercial installations. Imagine EcoBloom systems in office buildings, restaurants, hotels." The business proposition made sense, but there was more to consider. "David," I said carefully, "you've made it clear what you think of my business, of me as a business person. How would this actually work?" He met my eyes directly. "I was wrong, Becca. About EcoBloom. About you. It took me too long to admit it, but you've built something remarkable. I'd be coming in as the junior partner here, and I know it." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. My brother, who had never admitted being wrong about anything in his life, was not only acknowledging my success, but asking to be part of it. 2 weeks later, after intense discussions with Sophia and my lawyer, we announced the merger of EcoBloom and Mitchell Construction to form EcoBloom Sustainable Living. David brought his core team of skilled builders, his commercial contacts, and his production facility. I brought the brand, the growing customer base, and the vision for where sustainable urban living products could go. Our parents were stunned when we presented the merger at Sunday dinner. "You two are working together?" my mother asked, looking between us as if we might be playing an elaborate prank. "Voluntarily?" "Market forces make strange bedfellows," David said with a hint of his old smirk, but there was no bitterness in it now. "The residential construction market is changing," I explained, "and EcoBloom needs to scale. This partnership solves problems for both businesses." My father shook his head in amazement. "Who would have thought your little garden hobby would end up saving Mitchell Construction?" "It wasn't a hobby, Dad," I said quietly. "It was always a business. You just couldn't see it yet." For the first time, he nodded with genuine acknowledgement. "You're right, and I'm sorry for that." The integration of our companies wasn't without challenges. David's team, accustomed to traditional construction, had to adapt to our sustainable materials requirements. My team, used to our startup culture, sometimes clashed with the more formal procedures David had established. But the results were undeniable. Within 3 months of the merger, our production capacity had tripled. Within 6 months of the merger, EcoBloom's sustainable living had transformed into something neither David nor I could have created alone. His construction expertise allowed us to develop more sophisticated growing systems for restaurants and corporate clients, while my focus on sustainability and user experience kept our products accessible to everyday consumers. Our first major commercial client was Evergreen Tech, a software company renovating a downtown Portland office building. They wanted to incorporate sustainable elements throughout their workspace, and our living wall systems, lush with edible plants and ornamentals, became the centerpiece of their lobby. When the project was featured in Architectural Digest's Green Workspaces issue, the phones didn't stop ringing for weeks. The irony wasn't lost on me. David, who had once mocked my plant boxes, was now excitedly sketching custom growing system designs for high-end clients. His construction background gave him insights into structural integration that I would never have considered. Together, we were creating something truly innovative. Family dynamics shifted too. Sunday dinners became impromptu business meetings, with my parents offering surprisingly insightful suggestions. My father, a retired accountant, started reviewing our financial projections. My mother, who had always had an eye for design, began critiquing product prototypes. Even my younger sister, Emma, initially the most dismissive, started helping with our social media content. "You know," my mother said one evening as we cleared the dinner table, "I always worried about you, Becca. You seem to drift between interests, never settling. I thought you needed structure, a traditional career path." She paused, wiping a plate. "I didn't understand that you were searching for something that didn't exist yet, so you had to create it yourself." Her words touched something deep in me. "I wish you could have believed in me sooner," I admitted. She squeezed my hand. "We believe in you now, and maybe that's exactly when you needed it most, not when you were starting. But when you're ready to become something even bigger." That conversation planted a seed. As EcoBloom grew, I began to see how each family member's skills could benefit the company in ways I hadn't considered before. David was already transforming our production capabilities, but what about the others? The opportunity came sooner than expected. Our CFO, a consultant Sophia had recommended, announced she was moving across the country. We needed a replacement. Quickly, someone who understood both our financial needs and our company culture. "Dad," I said during our next Sunday dinner, "would you consider coming out of retirement? We need a CFO who gets what we're trying to do." My father nearly choked on his drink. "Me? Becca, I've been out of the game for years. Surely you need someone more current." "What we need," I countered, "is someone who understands financial discipline, but also shares our values. Someone who can help us grow responsibly without compromising our mission." He looked skeptical, but I could see the spark of interest in his eyes. "Let me think about it," he said, though I noticed he was already making notes on his napkin. 2 weeks later, Michael Mitchell became EcoBloom's chief financial officer. His conservative approach to cash management balanced my ambitious growth plans perfectly. He implemented financial controls that tightened our operations without stifling innovation. Within his first quarter, our margins improved by 7%. Watching my father come alive in this new role was remarkable. After years of retirement, he had purpose again. He'd arrive at the office before anyone else, poring over spreadsheets and industry reports. His generation had different perspectives on business, and while we occasionally clashed over risk tolerance, His experience proved invaluable. "You know what impresses me most about what you've built?" he said one evening as we worked late. "It's not just sustainable for the environment, it's sustainable as a business model. That's rarer than people think." Coming from my father, this was the highest praise imaginable. Emma was next. My younger sister had been floating between jobs, never finding anything that held her interest for long. But her social media work for EcoBloom had revealed a talent for digital storytelling that none of us had recognized before. "Your Instagram posts are getting 3 times the engagement of our professional content," I told her over coffee one morning. "Have you ever considered doing this full-time?" Emma laughed. "Working for my big sister? Wouldn't that be weird? Weirder than watching your siblings build something amazing while you take customer service calls at the cell phone store?" I challenged. She didn't have an immediate response to that. "Just think about it," I said. "We're looking to hire a digital marketing director next month. The job description basically describes what you're already doing for fun." 3 weeks later, Emma joined EcoBloom officially. Her approach to marketing was intuitive and authentic, in a way our previous consultants had never achieved. She understood our customers because she was our customer, an urban millennial interested in sustainability but intimidated by traditional gardening. Her content spoke directly to that demographic. Under Emma's guidance, our social media following quadrupled. She created a YouTube series called Grow With Me that followed beginner gardeners using our systems, documenting their successes and failures with honesty and humor. The series went viral when a celebrity chef discovered our products through it and featured them on his cooking show. Only my mother remained uninvolved in the family business, though she had become our most enthusiastic cheerleader. Karen Mitchell had always been creative. Her home was filled with her paintings and ceramics, but she'd never pursued her talents professionally. Then came the design challenge that would change everything. Our product team had been struggling to develop a line of decorative containers for our growing systems. Everything they created either compromised functionality or looked mass-produced and generic. We needed something distinctive that would elevate our brand in the high-end market. During a particularly frustrating design meeting, I remembered my mother's ceramic studio in my parents' basement. Her pieces had always had an organic, one-of-a-kind quality that people responded to emotionally. That evening, I visited my parents' home with a purpose. My mother was in her studio, hands covered in clay, working on a large planter with intricate botanical patterns pressed into its surface. "Mom," I said, "have you ever thought about designing commercially?" She looked up, surprised. "Commercially? No, dear. This is just for pleasure." I gestured to the piece she was working on. "That's exactly what EcoBloom needs. Something handcrafted, organic, unique. Our current designs are too industrial." She wiped her hands on her apron, considering. "I'm not sure how my one-off pieces would translate to mass production." "That's the beauty of it," I explained. "We'd create molds based on your designs, but with variations that maintain that handmade quality. We could even develop a premium line that you personally finish for special installations." The idea took root. My mother began bringing prototype designs to Sunday dinners, where they were critiqued and refined by the entire family. Her artistic sensibility, combined with David's construction knowledge and my understanding of functionality, resulted in a container line unlike anything on the market. When we launched the Bloom and Root collection 6 months later, it sold out within days. Interior design magazines featured the containers in spread after spread. Upscale retailers who had previously hesitated to carry our more utilitarian products now clamored for display space. My mother, at 63, found herself with an unexpected new career as EcoBloom's design director. Her studio was relocated to a light-filled space in our headquarters, where clients could watch her work and discuss custom pieces. With my entire family now integral to EcoBloom's operations, our Sunday dinners transformed entirely. We still gathered at my parents' house, But the conversations had shifted from polite family updates to passionate business discussions. The dining table became our most productive meeting space, where ideas flowed freely and innovations were born between horses. "Did you ever imagine this?" I asked David one Sunday evening as we helped clean up after dinner. Through the doorway, we could see our father explaining a financial projection to Emma while our mother sketched container variations. "What? That your little garage project would turn into a multi-million-dollar company that employs our entire family?" He smiled, the old competitive edge now tempered with genuine admiration. "Not in a million years, Becca, but that's what makes you special. You saw it when none of us could." Those words meant more coming from David than they would have from anyone else. My brother, once my harshest critic, had become my strongest ally. As our third year drew to a close, EcoBloom faced its most significant challenge yet. A multinational home goods corporation launched a line of growing systems that looked suspiciously similar to our designs, but at half the price. Their massive distribution network threatened to flood the market before we could respond. The entire family gathered for an emergency strategy session. The threat was existential. Competing on price against a corporate giant would be suicide, but maintaining our premium pricing without clear differentiation could lead customers to choose the cheaper alternative. "We can't match their manufacturing capacity," David said grimly, reviewing their product specifications. "Or their marketing budget," Emma added. "They've already bought prime placement in every major home magazine for the next 6 months." My father studied the financial projections. "If sales drop by even 20%, we'll need to start cutting operations within 2 quarters. The mood was somber. After everything we'd built, watching it threatened by corporate copying felt deeply unjust. Then my mother, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "They can copy our products, but they can't copy our story." We all turned to look at her. "Think about it," she continued, warming to her idea. "What makes EcoBloom special isn't just the growing systems, it's the family behind them. The passion, the journey, the expertise we've each brought. That multinational has no soul, no authentic connection to sustainability or urban gardening. It's just another product line to them." My sister immediately caught the vision. "She's right. We've been marketing products when we should be marketing our story. The family that's made sustainable living accessible and beautiful." "The Mitchell family legacy," David mused. "From my construction background to Mom's artistic designs to Dad's financial stewardship to Becca's original vision. And Emma's ability to tell that story," I added, watching the excitement build around the table. That night marked EcoBloom's most significant strategic pivot. Rather than trying to compete on product features or price, we embraced what made us truly unique: our family's integrated vision for sustainable living. Emma developed a marketing campaign centered on the family that grows together, featuring each of us in our roles at EcoBloom. My mother's design process became transparent, with customers able to watch creation videos. David hosted workshops on integrating growing systems into home architecture. My father developed financial calculators showing the long-term savings of growing your own produce. And I became the public face of our sustainability mission, speaking at conferences and in media interviews. The response was immediate and powerful. Our customer base rallied around us, sharing their own stories of how EcoBloom had changed their relationship with food and nature. Sales not only stabilized, but grew as people deliberately chose our authentic, family-driven mission over corporate mass production. 6 months later, the multinational quietly discontinued their Garden Essentials line, unable to capture the emotional connection we'd established with our community. It was around this time that Sofia Rodriguez, my original mentor and investor, came to me with an unexpected proposal. Verde Living, her eco-friendly retail chain, had expanded to 15 locations nationwide, but she was ready for her next chapter. "I'm thinking about succession planning," she said during our monthly coffee meeting. My children aren't interested in retail. They have their own paths. I nodded, unsure where she was heading. What would you think about EcoBloom acquiring Verde Living? She asked, watching my reaction carefully. The brand alignment is perfect. Your growing systems and containers are already our best-selling products, and the Verde stores could become EcoBloom's flagship retail presence. I nearly spilled my coffee. Verde Living was 3 times EcoBloom's size and revenue. The acquisition would instantly transform us from a successful niche manufacturer to a major player in the sustainable living industry. Sophia, I don't even know if we could secure financing for something of that scale. She waved away my concern. I'm not looking to cash out at market value. I'm looking for the right stewards to carry forward what I've built. We could structure this as a gradual transition, with equity components that make it manageable for your balance sheet. I promised to discuss it with my family, now both my personal family and my executive team. The potential was enormous, but so were the risks. Expanding into retail would require capabilities we hadn't yet developed. That Sunday's dinner was the most consequential business meeting of our company's history. My father ran financial scenarios late into the night. David and I mapped out logistics for supplying 15 retail locations. Emma researched the marketing implications of merging 2 beloved sustainability brands, and my mother considered how her designs could evolve to fill entire store environments rather than just individual products. The decision was unanimous. EcoBloom would take the leap from product company to lifestyle brand by acquiring Verde Living over a 3-year, structured transition. When we announced the acquisition, the business press was stunned. Family-run EcoBloom acquires retail giant Verde Living in sustainability power move, read the headlines. Industry analysts who had categorized us as a niche player suddenly recognized the strategy behind our moves. The integration process was complex, but energizing. Each family member took responsibility for a different aspect of the expanded business. David oversaw the physical transformation of Verde stores to feature more interactive growing displays. My mother redesigned store layouts to tell a cohesive visual story. Emma developed a unified digital presence that bridged online and in-store experiences. And my father structured the financial transition to maintain stability while allowing for continued growth. Watching my family apply their talents on this larger canvas filled me with a pride I hadn't anticipated. These were the same people who had once dismissed my plant hobby as just another passing phase. Now they were helping transform it into an industry-defining company. 1 year after the Verde acquisition, we gathered for a special celebration. EcoBloom Sustainable Living had been named to Fortune's Companies to Watch list, with specific mention of our innovative family leadership model. The magazine had requested a photo of the entire executive team, the Mitchell family, for their feature article. We took the picture in my parents' backyard, where a lush garden of EcoBloom systems now flourished. Standing together, we represented not just a successful company, but a profound transformation in how we related to each other. The hierarchy of family dynamics had been replaced by mutual respect for each person's unique contributions. After the photographer left, we remained in the garden, enjoying the warm evening and the fruits of our literal and figurative labors. Do you remember, I asked, looking at each of them, the first time I talked about EcoBloom at Sunday dinner? The looks on your faces? David laughed. I believe I called it playing with dirt and selling fancy planters. And I brought up all your abandoned projects, Emma added with a wince. Those hideous scarves. My father shook his head. We couldn't see it, Becca. The vision was too far ahead of us. But that's the point, my mother said. Always the wisest among us. True vision isn't about seeing what already exists. It's about seeing possibility where others see nothing at all. She gestured around the garden, then toward the horizon where EcoBloom's headquarters stood downtown. You saw this when it was just seeds and ideas. You planted them, nurtured them, And now, look what's grown. As the sun set over our family gathering, I reflected on the journey from mockery to meaningful collaboration. Success hadn't come from proving my family wrong. It had come from creating something so compelling that it transformed their perception of what was possible. And in that transformation, we had all found new versions of ourselves. The real achievement wasn't just building a successful company. It was building a new kind of family relationship, one based on shared purpose, mutual respect, and the recognition that each person's gifts were essential to our collective success. EcoBloom continued to flourish, expanding to 23 retail locations within the next 2 years. Our growing systems evolved to include smart technology that monitored plant health and optimized growing conditions. Commercial installations became a major revenue stream, with hotels, restaurants, and corporate campuses embracing the well-being benefits of living walls and edible landscaping. But the heart of our success remained the Sunday dinner table, where new ideas were born. Between passing dishes and sharing stories, the family that had once laughed at my small business venture had become the driving force behind its growth into an industry leader. Looking back, I can see that those early dismissals weren't just about lack of vision. They were about fear. Fear that I would fail, that I would be hurt, that I would waste my potential. My family had wanted to protect me from disappointment. What they didn't understand was that I needed to risk disappointment to discover what I was truly capable of creating. Now, as I mentor young entrepreneurs through our EcoBloom Foundation, I often share this lesson. Your greatest critics may one day become your greatest champions, not because you proved them wrong, but because you showed them a possibility they couldn't previously imagine. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give your family is the opportunity to reinvent themselves alongside you. As EcoBloom's 5th anniversary approached, we faced an unexpected development. A major international sustainability conglomerate called Greenscale had been quietly acquiring shares of our company on the open market. Their representative reached out requesting a meeting to discuss what they called strategic alignment opportunities. The family gathered in our conference room the day before the scheduled meeting, opinions divided on what this approach might mean. It could be a genuine partnership opportunity, my father said, reviewing Greenscale's portfolio of companies. They've maintained the independent operations of most of their acquisitions. David was more skeptical. Or they could be looking to absorb our technology and eliminate a competitor. Their indoor farming division overlaps with our commercial growing systems. Emma had been researching their public reputation. Their sustainability metrics look solid on paper, but there are concerns about their labor practices in South American operations. I'm not sure their corporate culture aligns with ours. My mother, always focused on the human element, asked the most important question. What do you want, Becca? This is your vision that brought us all here. I considered carefully before answering. The truth was that EcoBloom had grown beyond anything I had initially imagined. We had expanded from my small apartment garden to an international company with over 200 employees. Our products were helping people reconnect with food production in 12 countries. The impact was meaningful and growing. I want to maintain our mission, I said finally. Whatever happens, EcoBloom needs to stay true to its purpose, making sustainable living accessible and beautiful for everyone. If a partnership with Greenscale amplifies that mission, I'm open to exploring it. If it compromises it, then no amount of money would make it worthwhile. The meeting with Greenscale's executives the next day was cordial but tense. Their CEO, Harrison Wells, presented an acquisition offer that made my father's eyebrows rise. The number was substantial, life-changing for our entire family. But the terms revealed their true intentions. We see tremendous value in your product development and brand loyalty, Harrison explained smoothly. Our plan would be to integrate your growing systems into our Greenhaven product line, while maintaining EcoBloom as a premium brand within our portfolio. And management structure? I asked, already sensing the answer. We typically install our own leadership team during transition, he replied. Though we'd certainly value your input as a consultant during the integration period. Say, a 2-year contract? I glanced around at my family, my executive team, and saw the same realization in their eyes. This wasn't a partnership. It was an assimilation. EcoBloom would become a brand name owned by a corporation with different values and priorities. The family that had built it would be dispersed. We appreciate your interest, I said carefully, but I believe there's a fundamental misalignment in our visions. EcoBloom isn't just a product line or a brand identity. It's a mission expressed through a family business. Harrison looked genuinely puzzled. Family businesses are charming, but they have natural limitations. Scale requires more robust corporate structure. My father, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up. Our current growth trajectory suggests otherwise. Our family structure hasn't limited our expansion. It's accelerated it through aligned decision-making and authentic leadership. With respect, Harrison countered, your numbers are impressive for a company of your size, but Greenscale operates at a level that requires standardized processes and centralized control. The family approach is simply not efficient. David, who had once held similar views about corporate structure, surprised me by jumping in. That perspective misses the core innovation of EcoBloom. Our family approach, as you call it, isn't inefficient. It's precisely why our customer loyalty metrics outperform industry standards by 340%. People don't just buy our products, they buy into our story and values. The meeting ended without resolution. Greenscale left their offer on the table, giving us 30 days to reconsider. As they departed, Harrison made one final comment that stuck with me. Eventually, all successful family businesses reach a point where they need to grow up and join the real corporate world. The question is just whether it happens on your terms or someone else's. That evening, rather than our usual Sunday dinner at my parents' house, we gathered at my apartment, where EcoBloom had first taken root with those early container gardens. The space had evolved alongside my journey, now featuring a sprawling, rooftop greenhouse where I tested new growing systems and plant varieties. It felt appropriate to return to the beginning as we contemplated our future. They're not entirely wrong, my father admitted as we discussed the offer over homemade pasta with vegetables harvested from my roof. Family businesses do face unique challenges with scale, succession planning, capital constraints, emotional decision-making. But they're wrong about our specific family business, Emma countered. Our metrics don't show any performance plateau. If anything, our growth is accelerating. My mother, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. I think we're asking the wrong question. It's not whether we could continue growing as we are. The numbers suggest we can. The question is whether we want to. We all turned to look at her. Growth for its own sake isn't a virtue, she continued. We each joined EcoBloom because we believed in what Becca was building, not just a company, but a different way of thinking about business, family, and sustainability. If growing bigger means losing that, then perhaps bigger isn't better. Her perspective shifted something in the room. We'd been so focused on defending our ability to scale that we hadn't questioned whether unlimited scale aligned with our actual goals. What if, I said slowly, instead of growing bigger, we focused on growing deeper? David looked intrigued. What do you mean by deeper? I mean measuring our success not just by revenue or geographic expansion, but by depth of impact. What if we created an entirely new model of what a family business can be in the 21st century? The conversation that followed lasted late into the night. Rather than simply rejecting Greenscale's offer, we began developing an alternative vision for EcoBloom's future, one that challenged conventional assumptions about business growth and success. Over the next 2 weeks, we refined this vision into what we called the family enterprise model. Instead of pursuing unlimited corporate expansion, we would create a federation of family-led businesses united by shared values and mutual support. When Harrison Wells returned for our answer, he was met not with a simple rejection, but with a counter-proposal. "We've decided not to accept your acquisition offer," I began, "but we'd like to propose a different kind of relationship." I outlined our vision. EcoBloom would remain independent, but we would establish a partnering framework with like-minded family businesses, including potentially some within the Greenscale portfolio. This network would share resources, knowledge, and market access while maintaining their unique cultures and family leadership. Rather than a corporate hierarchy, I explained, imagine a constellation of family enterprises, each bringing their authentic vision and specialized expertise to a common marketplace. Harrison looked skeptical. "That sounds idealistic, but impractical. How would governance work? Decision-making? Profit distribution?" My father slid across a detailed structural document. "We've developed a framework that addresses those concerns while preserving the advantages of family leadership. It's a hybrid model drawing from cooperative structures, franchise systems, and traditional corporate partnerships." To my surprise, Harrison didn't dismiss the idea outright. He studied the document with genuine curiosity, asking thoughtful questions about implementation and scalability. By the end of the meeting, while he hadn't abandoned his acquisition strategy, he admitted our alternative presented an intriguing innovation in business structure. "I still believe integration with Greenscale is your best path forward," he said as he prepared to leave. "But I respect that you're not just rejecting our approach, you're actively developing an alternative. That's refreshing." After he left, my family exchanged hopeful glances. Whether or not Greenscale ultimately participated, we had clarified our own path forward. Rather than being absorbed by corporate culture, we would create a new definition of what growth could mean for a values-driven family business. The next 6 months were transformative for EcoBloom. We formalized our family enterprise model and began reaching out to other family-owned businesses in the sustainability sector. The response was overwhelming. From a small organic soil company in Minnesota to a sustainable packaging innovator in Oregon, dozens of family businesses expressed interest in our federation concept. Emma developed a powerful marketing campaign around the tagline, "Families Building a Sustainable Future," highlighting the authentic stories and specialized knowledge that family businesses brought to environmental challenges. The campaign resonated deeply with consumers increasingly disillusioned with faceless corporate environmentalism. We established the EcoBloom Federation with an initial cohort of 7 family businesses. Each maintained their independence and unique identity while gaining access to shared resources, consolidated purchasing power, collaborative research and development, cross-promotional marketing, and streamlined distribution channels. My father developed the financial structure that made it work, creating a model where each member contributed to and benefited from Federation resources proportionally to their size and needs. David designed our physical collaboration spaces, innovation centers where member families could work together on joint projects. My mother created the visual identity system that allowed each business to maintain their brand while clearly indicating their Federation membership. Remarkably, Harrison Wells continued to follow our progress with interest. 6 months after launching the Federation, he requested another meeting. "I've been watching what you're building," he said without preamble. "It's unorthodox, but the preliminary results are compelling. Your Federation is achieving many of the efficiency advantages of corporate consolidation while preserving the authenticity that drives customer loyalty." He placed a new proposal on the table. Not an acquisition offer this time, but a partnership opportunity. 2 of Greenscale's smaller portfolio companies, both originally family businesses that had struggled under corporate integration, would be given the autonomy to join our Federation as a pilot program. "If they thrive within your model," Harrison explained, "we'd consider a larger restructuring of how we approach family business acquisitions." It was a significant validation of our approach and potentially the beginning of a major shift in how large corporations interacted with family enterprises. We accepted the pilot partnership, establishing clear metrics to evaluate its success. The transformation of those two companies over the following year became a case study in business schools. Freed from rigid corporate structures and reconnected with their founding families' involvement, both businesses experienced remarkable revivals. Innovation accelerated, employee engagement soared, and customer loyalty strengthened. Most importantly, their environmental impact improved as they reconnected with their original sustainability missions. By our 6th anniversary, the EcoBloom Federation had grown to 23 member businesses across North America and Europe. Our combined revenue exceeded $500 million, but more meaningful were our impact metrics. 15,000 tons of chemical pesticides prevented through organic growing methods. 3. 2 million square feet of urban growing space created. And over 200,000 families empowered to grow their own food in limited spaces. The business media, initially skeptical of our quaint family approach, now regularly featured our federation as a pioneering model for sustainable business growth. Harvard Business Review published a detailed analysis titled The EcoBloom Effect: Reimagining Family Enterprise for Global Impact. Through it all, our Sunday family dinners remained the heart of EcoBloom. No matter how busy our schedules became, we maintained this tradition, though now we sometimes hosted Federation members from across the country or conducted virtual dinners with international partners. During one such dinner, my father made an observation that captured how far we'd come. When we first started working together, he said, passing the salad harvested from my rooftop garden, I thought we were building a company. Now I realize we're building a legacy, not just for our family, but for all the families in our federation. David nodded thoughtfully. Remember when I was so worried about Mitchell Construction collapsing? I thought I was losing everything I'd built. I couldn't see that it was making room for something much more meaningful. That's often how transformation works, my mother replied. We have to let go of what we thought we were building in order to create something better than we could have imagined. Emma, who had recently been featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30 for her innovative approach to Federation marketing, smiled. And to think it all started because Becca had too many plants in her apartment. We laughed, but the truth in her observation wasn't lost on any of us. From those humble container gardens had grown not just a successful company, but a new vision for how families could work together, how businesses could grow responsibly, and how sustainability could become a lived practice rather than a marketing slogan. As EcoBloom's influence expanded, so did the demands on our time. Speaking engagements, federation development, international partnerships, our schedules became increasingly complex. Yet we remained committed to preserving what made our family business special, the direct connection between our values and our work. One challenge we hadn't anticipated was the public's fascination with our family story. As media coverage of EcoBloom increased, so did interest in the dynamics of our working relationships. Business publications wanted to explore the secret sauce of our successful family enterprise, while lifestyle magazines were fascinated by how we balanced professional and personal relationships. Emma, ever the marketing strategist, saw opportunity in this attention. People connect with authentic stories, she argued during a strategy session. Our family journey, from skepticism to collaboration, resonates because everyone has experienced being underestimated or having to prove themselves. With careful consideration for privacy boundaries, we decided to selectively share aspects of our story. Emma produced a documentary series called Growing Together that followed our family's business journey while highlighting other Federation families. The series became unexpectedly popular, putting human faces to the sustainable business movement. The growing public platform brought new responsibilities. Environmental advocacy groups invited us to speak about business-driven sustainability. Universities requested case studies on our Federation model. Government agencies consulted us on policies to support family enterprises in the green economy. My father, once the most traditional businessman among us, became a passionate advocate for revitalizing family business in rural communities. Small towns across America were built on family businesses, he would explain in his presentations. When those businesses were replaced by corporate chains, we lost more than jobs. We lost the connection between commerce and community. The Federation model offers a path to restore that connection. David focused on mentoring construction companies transitioning to sustainable building practices. My mother developed an artisan network that helped traditional craftspeople find markets for sustainable products. And Emma launched a youth entrepreneurship program teaching high school students to develop business models that balanced profit with environmental and social responsibility. As for me, I found my voice advocating for women entrepreneurs in the sustainability sector. My journey from dismissed hobbyist to industry innovator resonated particularly with women fighting to be taken seriously in male-dominated fields. One such speaking engagement led to a pivotal moment in EcoBloom's evolution. I had been invited to address the Global Sustainability Summit in Stockholm, a gathering of environmental leaders from business, government, and nonprofit sectors. My presentation on the Federation model was scheduled between a petroleum company CEO discussing their green initiatives and a tech billionaire promoting proprietary carbon capture technology. The contrast in approaches couldn't have been starker. While they focused on top-down, technology-driven solutions controlled by corporate interests, I presented our vision of distributed innovation through family enterprises working in collaborative networks. Rather than concentrating power and profit, our model distributed both while accelerating practical sustainability solutions. The audience response was electric. The Q&A session ran long as attendees, many representing family businesses from around the world, asked detailed questions about implementing similar federations in their regions. By evening, my schedule was filled with meetings with potential international partners eager to adapt our model. When I called home that night to share the developments with my family, they had already seen clips of my presentation circulating online. "You've struck a chord," David said. "People are hungry for an alternative to corporate environmentalism. They want solutions that strengthen communities rather than just enriching shareholders." My father, ever focused on practical implementation, was already considering the implications. If we're going to scale this model globally, we need to develop regional adaptation frameworks. What works in North America won't necessarily translate directly to Asia or Africa. My mother added, "And we need to ensure the cultural elements translate. The authentic connection to sustainability that comes from family stewardship. That's not just structure, it's values and relationships." Emma, thinking ahead as always, was already drafting communication strategies. We need to position this carefully, not as EcoBloom expanding globally, but as a resource for local family enterprises to develop their own regional federations. Otherwise, we risk becoming exactly the kind of corporate entity we're providing an alternative to. Their insights highlighted how our family collaboration had evolved. We were no longer just relatives working together in a business. We had developed complementary perspectives that collectively generated wisdom none of us could have achieved individually. Our family dinner table had become an innovation lab for reimagining business itself. The months following the Stockholm Summit were among the most intense of our journey. Requests poured in from family businesses around the world interested in adapting our federation model. Rather than attempting to manage global expansion from Portland, we developed a decentralized approach we called Federation Seeding. We would provide the structural framework, initial training, and ongoing support. But each regional federation would develop independently, adapted to local conditions, and led by families from those communities. This approach preserved the essential connection to place and culture that made family businesses effective sustainability advocates. A pivotal test of this model came when we received an unexpected email from Takashi Yamamoto, head of one of Japan's oldest family businesses specializing in traditional plant cultivation techniques. His company, Yamamoto Gardens, had survived for 15 generations but was now struggling against industrialized agriculture and changing consumer preferences. "Your federation model speaks to me," he wrote. "In Japan, we have a concept called Sanpo Yoshi, three-way satisfaction. Business should benefit the seller, the buyer, and society. Your approach embodies this philosophy in a modern context." The connection with Yamamoto Gardens opened doors throughout East Asia, where family businesses faced unique pressures from rapid modernization and corporate consolidation. These businesses possessed invaluable knowledge about sustainable practices, developed over centuries, but struggled to remain economically viable in globalized markets. Within months, we found ourselves developing an Asia-Pacific Federation hub, adapting our model to honor the distinct cultural traditions and intergenerational dynamics of Asian family enterprises. This expansion required profound humility on our part, recognition that our Western business frameworks needed to be fundamentally reimagined rather than simply exported. My mother proved invaluable in this process. Her artistic sensibility and respect for cultural heritage helped bridge philosophical divides that might have derailed more conventional business partnerships. She spent 3 months traveling throughout Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, not to implement our systems, but to learn from families whose sustainable practices predated EcoBloom by centuries. "These families don't need our sustainability innovations," she reported during one of our Sunday dinner video calls. "They've been practicing ecological balance for generations. What they need are contemporary market connections and communication strategies that honor, rather than commodify, their traditional knowledge." Emma immediately grasped the implications. "We need to invert our usual approach," she said. "Instead of adapting our growing systems to their markets, we should be helping them translate their ancestral wisdom into forms that global consumers can understand and value." This insight led to the development of what we called heritage lines, product collections that preserved traditional practices while creating economic viability for their stewards. Each heritage line was developed in deep collaboration with the originating family, ensuring authentic representation and fair compensation for their knowledge. The first such collaboration with Yamamoto Gardens featured specialized growing systems for rare medicinal herbs, incorporating cultivation techniques developed over 5 centuries. Their exquisite aesthetic and cultural significance attracted premium prices in Western markets, while educational components shared the cultural context of these practices with consumers. For Takashi Yamamoto, the partnership offered a way to preserve family traditions that had nearly been lost. "My children had planned to pursue corporate careers in Tokyo," he told us during a Federation gathering. "Now they see a future in continuing our family's work, not as a burden of tradition, but as meaningful innovation for contemporary challenges." Similar stories unfolded across the Asia-Pacific Federation. Family businesses that had been dismissed as outdated found renewed purpose as leaders in sustainable innovation. Traditional knowledge that had been undervalued in industrialized economies became recognized for its ecological wisdom. The unexpected success of these heritage lines caught the attention of Greenscale's Harrison Wells, who requested another meeting to discuss their market performance. When we gathered in our conference room, his approach had noticeably shifted from our previous encounters. "Your federation model is achieving something our corporate structure simply cannot," he admitted, reviewing the growth metrics for heritage lines. "These products have emotional and cultural dimensions that resist standardization. Consumers aren't just buying sustainable products, they're connecting with authentic stories and traditions." He proposed a new form of collaboration. Greenscale would provide scaled manufacturing support and global distribution for Federation products, while Federation families would maintain complete control over design, quality standards, and storytelling. Rather than acquiring these businesses, Greenscale would serve as their infrastructure partner, an inversion of conventional corporate relationships. "We've been approaching sustainability as a technical challenge," Harrison explained. "Your Federation has demonstrated it's equally a cultural one, about preserving and evolving human relationships with natural systems. That's not something corporate efficiency can engineer." This partnership model, which we called distributed production, became another innovation in our evolving approach to sustainable business. Federation families maintained their independence and cultural integrity while accessing industrial-scale production capabilities that would have been impossible to develop individually. The most remarkable aspect of this arrangement was how it transformed Greenscale itself. What began as a pragmatic business partnership gradually evolved into a profound re-evaluation of their corporate structure. Harrison became a regular participant in our Federation gatherings, not just as a business partner but as a student of alternative organizational models. "We've been trapped in outdated assumptions about efficiency and scale," he confessed during one such meeting. "The pandemic and climate disruptions have exposed the vulnerabilities of centralized global systems. Your Federation's adaptability has proven more resilient than our supposedly optimized supply chains." This evolution in Harrison's thinking mirrored a broader shift occurring in business communities worldwide. As environmental and social pressures intensified, the limitations of shareholder-centered corporate models became increasingly apparent. Our Federation offered a living demonstration of an alternative approach, one that balanced economic viability with ecological responsibility and community well-being. Academic researchers began studying our organizational structure, publishing case studies examining how our distributed collaboration model compared to conventional corporate hierarchies. The findings consistently showed that while Federation businesses might grow more slowly than venture-backed startups, they demonstrated greater resilience during crises, higher sustainability performance, and stronger community benefits. Harvard Business School professor Elena Markova developed a theoretical framework she called regenerative enterprise based on EcoBloom's approach. "What distinguishes the Federation model," she wrote, "is its fundamentally different orientation toward growth. Rather than extracting maximum value from resources and relationships, it cultivates conditions for mutual flourishing. The result is business that strengthens rather than depletes the social and ecological systems it depends upon." These academic validations confirmed what we had discovered through practice. Our family-centered approach wasn't just emotionally satisfying, it was economically sound in a world facing increasing environmental constraints and social tensions. As EcoBloom's recognition grew, so did demands on our time. Between Federation development, heritage line collaborations, and the distributed production partnership with Greenscale, our family found ourselves traveling constantly, often in different directions simultaneously. The intensity was beginning to take a toll on the family connections that had always been EcoBloom's foundation. During one particularly hectic month, we realized we had missed our Sunday dinner tradition for the first time since founding the company. Though we connected virtually from 4 different countries, the sense of disconnection was palpable. Something essential was being lost in our global expansion. My father, ever practical in addressing problems, called for a family retreat. We gathered at a remote cabin in the Oregon mountains. No digital devices, no business agendas, just 4 days to reconnect with each other and reflect on our journey. On our second evening, sitting around a campfire, my mother voiced what many of us had been feeling. "We've created something remarkable," she said, watching the flames dance. "But I worry we're at risk of falling into the same trap as conventional businesses, sacrificing depth for breadth, quality for quantity, connection for expansion." Her observation sparked a profound conversation about our path forward. Each family member shared their reflections on what had been most meaningful in our journey and what was at risk of being lost. David spoke of the satisfaction he found in hands-on creation, something increasingly rare as administrative responsibilities consumed his time. My father expressed concern that our financial success might gradually drift from its moorings in genuine sustainability. Emma worried that our marketing was becoming more polished but less authentic as professional teams took over from her direct involvement. And my mother missed the deep creative engagement that had characterized her early product designs. As, for me, I realized I had become so focused on growing EcoBloom's impact that I had neglected the very practices that had inspired it. My own container garden at home had withered from neglect during my constant travel. The direct connection with growing things that had started this journey had become increasingly abstract. Perhaps, I suggested as the fire burned low, we need to redefine success again. Not by how far we've spread our model, but by how deeply we're living its values. This conversation marked a turning point in EcoBloom's evolution. Rather than continuing to expand horizontally through new regional federations, we decided to focus on deepening the impact and integrity of existing relationships. We called this strategic shift Root and Rise, strengthening our foundations while elevating our aspirations. The practical implications were significant. We significantly reduced our travel schedules, using digital collaboration tools to maintain global connections while reclaiming time for local engagement. Each family member recommitted to direct involvement in aspects of the business that connected them to its core purpose. And we restored our Sunday dinner tradition as sacred, protected time for family connection. For me personally, this meant returning to my roots as an urban gardener. I renovated my apartment building's rooftop into an experimental growing space, where I could test new designs firsthand rather than relying on R&D reports. This hands-on reconnection with plants and soil reinvigorated my creativity and restored the authentic passion that had always been EcoBloom's driving force. The Root and Rise approach transformed not just our family dynamics, but our business strategy. Rather than measuring success primarily through financial metrics or geographic expansion, we developed more nuanced indicators of impact: biodiversity supported, family businesses sustained, cultural practices preserved, communities strengthened. This shift resonated deeply with our Federation partners, many of whom had experienced similar tensions between growth and integrity. Together, we developed what we called deep scaling, an alternative to conventional growth models that prioritized qualitative development alongside quantitative expansion. Under this approach, established Federation members would mentor newer ones, creating intergenerational knowledge transfer similar to family apprenticeship traditions. Regional federations would focus on deepening local impact before expanding further. And we would measure success not just by economic performance, but by contributions to ecological restoration and cultural vitality. The business media initially misinterpreted this strategy as a retreat from growth. EcoBloom scales back global ambitions, read one headline, suggesting we had hit limits to our Federation model. But as our approach yielded increasingly impressive sustainability outcomes and economic resilience, more thoughtful analysis emerged. What EcoBloom has pioneered isn't a rejection of growth, but a redefinition of it, wrote business journalist Maya Rodriguez in a feature for Fast Company. Their deep scaling model suggests that business can grow in dimension and impact without following the extractive patterns that have characterized industrial capitalism. This reconceptualization of growth attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Faith communities interested in economic models aligned with values of stewardship and justice. Indigenous business networks seeking alternatives to exploitative development patterns. Even impact investors frustrated by the limitations of conventional return metrics. Ironically, by consciously limiting certain forms of expansion, we found ourselves at the center of a more profound conversation about the future of business itself. EcoBloom was increasingly cited not just as a sustainable product company, but as a working prototype of post-growth economics, a practical demonstration that prosperity didn't require endless extraction and consumption. My father, with his traditional business background, found this evolution particularly meaningful. When I first joined EcoBloom, he reflected during a Federation leadership gathering, I thought I was helping build a better business. Now I realize we're helping reimagine what business can be, a regenerative force rather than an extractive one. As the regenerative business movement gained momentum, we found ourselves reconnecting with Harrison Wells and Greenscale in unexpected ways. Their distributed production partnership with our federation had exposed them to fundamentally different ways of conceptualizing business purpose and structure. This exposure was gradually transforming their corporate culture from within. We're implementing significant changes, Harrison shared during a quarterly review meeting. Reorganizing into semi-autonomous regional units with more decision-making authority. Extending planning horizons from quarterly to 7-year cycles. Integrating ecological metrics into executive compensation. All inspired by what we've observed in your federation model. While Greenscale would never become a family business, they were incorporating elements of our approach that could work within their context. This evolution represented something more significant than either competition or assimilation. It suggested the possibility of diverse business models coexisting and cross-pollinating in a more pluralistic economic ecosystem. This kind of transformation was occurring throughout our networks, as conventional businesses, nonprofits, and government agencies drew inspiration from the Federation model while adapting it to their unique contexts. Rather than advocating for one perfect organizational structure, we found ourselves supporting a diversity of approaches united by shared values and regenerative outcomes. The Harvard Business Review captured this dynamic in a cover story titled, "The EcoBloom Effect: How One Family Business is Seeding a Business Ecosystem Revolution." The article detailed how our approach was influencing organizations across sectors, from community-owned renewable energy cooperatives to bioregional food systems to circular economy manufacturing networks. What distinguishes EcoBloom's influence, the article concluded, is how it transcends conventional business categories. They're demonstrating that the boundaries between family business, social enterprise, environmental organization, and cultural preservation project can productively blur when unified by regenerative purpose. As these ideas spread, we received an invitation that would have seemed unimaginable when we began, to present our model at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Initially, we hesitated, wary of how our approach might be received, or co-opted, in the heart of global capitalism. After much family discussion, we decided to accept, seeing it as an opportunity to inject regenerative perspectives into mainstream economic discourse. The contrast between our presentation and surrounding discussions couldn't have been starker. While most speakers focused on technological solutions and market mechanisms for sustainability challenges, we shared stories of cultural wisdom, intergenerational collaboration, and ecological relationships from Federation families worldwide. The climate crisis is often framed as a technical problem requiring engineered solutions, I explained to the gathered economic leaders. But our experience suggests it's equally a relationship crisis, a consequence of severed connections between people, places, and living systems. I shared how Federation families from Morocco to Japan were demonstrating practical alternatives, blending traditional ecological knowledge with contemporary innovation to restore these essential relationships. Instead of abstract policy prescriptions, we offered concrete examples of businesses that thrived by regenerating rather than depleting the social and ecological systems they depended upon. The response was mixed. Some attendees dismissed our approach as too small-scale to address global challenges. Others were intrigued but skeptical about its applicability beyond family businesses. But a significant minority, particularly younger, leaders, responded with genuine excitement to alternatives to an economic paradigm they increasingly questioned. Among those responding positively was, surprisingly, the CEO of TexCorp Industries, one of the world's largest textile manufacturers and a company with a troubling environmental record. Ananya Mehta approached our family after the presentation, her expression a mix of professional interest and personal emotion. Your discussion of regenerative business models resonates with something I've been wrestling with privately, she confided. My grandfather started our company with looms in his home, creating fabrics that honored our cultural heritage. 3 generations later, we've become exactly the kind of disconnected global corporation you described, optimized for financial efficiency at the expense of ecological and cultural relationships. She explained that despite TexCorp's financial success, she felt increasingly troubled by its environmental impact and disconnection from the communities where it operated. I've been searching for a different approach, but the quarterly pressures make fundamental transformation seem impossible. This conversation began what would become one of the most significant and challenging relationships in EcoBloom's journey. Over the following months, Ananya engaged in ongoing dialogue with our family and Federation leaders about the possibility of transforming TexCorp, not through superficial sustainability initiatives, but through fundamental reimagining of its structure and purpose. The process was neither simple nor linear. TexCorp's scale, publicly traded status, and entrenched practices created barriers that our smaller, privately held businesses hadn't faced. Shareholder expectations, global supply chains, and industry norms all exerted pressure against meaningful change. Yet Ananya persisted, implementing elements of our Federation model where possible while developing creative approaches to her company's unique constraints. She reorganized TexCorp into semi-autonomous regional units with greater local accountability. She extended planning horizons and integrated ecological metrics into performance evaluations. Most significantly, she began a systematic effort to re-embed the company in the communities and ecosystems where it operated. The financial markets initially punished these moves, with TexCorp stock dropping as analysts questioned the company's commitment to maximizing short-term returns. But as operational improvements emerged from greater employee engagement and reduced environmental liabilities, even conventional financial metrics began to reflect the benefits of this approach. 3 years into TexCorp's transformation journey, Ananya invited our family to tour their flagship facility in Bangalore, once a standard industrial complex, now reimagined as what she called a regenerative manufacturing ecosystem. The changes were remarkable. The sprawling factory had been redesigned to incorporate natural lighting, living walls purified the air, and a sophisticated water recycling system had reduced consumption by 87%. More significant than these physical changes were the operational transformations. Production lines had been reorganized into semi-autonomous teams with greater decision-making authority. Local farm cooperatives provided organic cotton through direct relationships rather than anonymous commodity markets. And artisanal textile traditions had been integrated into contemporary design processes, creating products with both cultural depth and market appeal. The financial metrics still matter, Ananya acknowledged as we walked the production floor. But they're no longer our only or even primary measure of success. We evaluate our performance through what we call concentric accountability. First to our workers and their communities, then to the ecosystems where we operate, and finally to our shareholders. This inverted hierarchy had initially provoked resistance from TexCorp's board and investors, but the results were increasingly difficult to dismiss. Employee retention had improved dramatically, reducing training costs. Community partnerships had eliminated expensive regulatory conflicts, and ecological improvements had substantially lowered resource expenses. Most surprisingly, these changes had attracted premium customers willing to pay more for products with authentic sustainability credentials. TexCorp's stock, after the initial decline, had rebounded to outperform industry averages, not despite their regenerative approach, but because of it. The conventional business world keeps expecting this to be a temporary phase, Ananya said with a smile. They're waiting for us to return to normal operations focused solely on quarterly profits. They don't understand that we've discovered a more stable, satisfying, and ultimately more profitable way of operating. Walking through the factory with my family, I was struck by the parallels to our own journey. Like EcoBloom, TexCorp was demonstrating that businesses could thrive economically while honoring ecological limits and human well-being. But they were proving it at a scale and within a corporate structure that many had assumed would be impervious to such transformation. The implications were profound. If even a multinational public company like TexCorp could evolve toward regenerative practices, perhaps the barriers to widespread economic transformation weren't as insurmountable as they appeared. Maybe the choice wasn't between maintaining extractive business models or collapsing into economic crisis, but rather evolving toward systems that could generate prosperity while restoring rather than depleting natural and social capital. "You've created something remarkable here," I told Ananya as our tour concluded. "And in some ways, more challenging than what we've built with EcoBloom. We had the advantage of designing regenerative principles in from the beginning. You're retrofitting them into an established corporate structure." She nodded thoughtfully. "Different challenges, certainly. But we've learned so much from your federation model, particularly about embedding business in authentic relationships with communities and ecosystems. The question now is how to scale these lessons throughout global supply chains without losing their essence." This question became central to the next phase of EcoBloom's evolution. While continuing to support our Federation of Family Businesses, we developed what we called the Regenerative Transition Framework, a methodology to help conventional businesses evolve toward more regenerative practices regardless of their size, sector, or starting point. The framework wasn't prescriptive but adaptive, acknowledging that each organization would need to find its own authentic path toward regenerative operations. Rather than imposing standardized sustainability metrics, it provided processes for businesses to discover how their unique capabilities could contribute to ecological and social regeneration while maintaining economic viability. Working with Ananya, we piloted this approach with selected TexCorp suppliers, many of whom were struggling with the same tensions between short-term financial pressures and longer-term sustainability imperatives. The results varied widely based on each company's context, but consistent patterns emerged. Businesses that authentically engaged with regenerative principles typically found unexpected innovations, deeper employee engagement, and stronger community relationships. As word spread about these pilots, requests for guidance began pouring in from businesses worldwide. Rather than trying to manage this demand directly, we developed a Transition Catalyst training program, preparing others to facilitate regenerative business evolution in their regional contexts. Within 2 years, over 300 transition catalysts were working with businesses across 27 countries, adapting our framework to diverse cultural and economic environments. This rapid diffusion of regenerative business practices caught the attention of major economic institutions. The World Bank invited us to advise on development financing criteria. The International Monetary Fund requested briefings on implications for macroeconomic policy. Business schools from Harvard to Singapore incorporated our case studies into their curricula. Yet even as these institutional engagements expanded our influence, our family remained conscious of the risks of becoming disconnected from the practical, hands-on work that had always been EcoBloom's foundation. We maintained our root and rise approach, ensuring that each family member remained directly involved in tangible aspects of the business while contributing to its broader evolution. My father balanced his work on financial frameworks with regular sessions advising Federation families on practical business challenges. David continued designing innovative growing systems while developing regenerative approaches to commercial architecture. Emma maintained personal involvement in key marketing campaigns while building our global communication strategy. And my mother divided her time between product design and mentoring artisans in Federation businesses worldwide. As for me, I consciously limited my speaking and advisory work to preserve time for what had started it all: direct engagement with plants and growing systems. My rooftop garden evolved into an urban agriculture research center, where I could test new approaches firsthand, maintaining the connection between abstract sustainability principles and lived experience. This balance between practical engagement and systemic influence became increasingly important as regenerative business concepts entered mainstream discourse. We witnessed the beginning of what often happens with transformative ideas: dilution and co-optation as they're adopted without their underlying values and relationships. I'm seeing companies use the language of regeneration while maintaining extractive practices, Emma reported after reviewing marketing materials from several major corporations. They're treating it as just another branding exercise rather than a fundamental reimagining of their relationship with people and ecosystems. This observation prompted serious family discussion about how to maintain the integrity of regenerative business concepts as they spread. We recognized that we couldn't control how others used these ideas, but we could clearly demonstrate their authentic application through our own practices and federation relationships. The antidote to co-optation isn't control, but exemplification, my mother suggested. We need to make the real thing so visible and compelling that superficial imitations become obviously inadequate by comparison. This insight shaped our approach to the growing regenerative business movement. Rather than attempting to own or standardize these concepts, we focused on amplifying authentic examples across our networks, sharing stories that illustrated genuine regenerative relationships in diverse contexts. Special attention was given to examples from indigenous and traditional communities whose regenerative practices had been developed through centuries of ecological relationship, often without recognition from mainstream economics. Through this process, we came to understand that the significance of EcoBloom's journey wasn't just the specific federation model we had developed, but the broader demonstration that economic activity could be organized around regenerative rather than extractive principles. Our family business had become a visible example of alternatives to an economic paradigm that many had assumed was inevitable and unchangeable. The true measure of this impact became apparent during a global economic downturn that began in our 9th year. As financial markets contracted and consumer spending declined, conventional businesses responded with familiar patterns: mass layoffs, reduced environmental commitments, and intensified resource extraction to maintain profit margins. But across our federation and beyond, among businesses that had adopted regenerative principles, a different pattern emerged. These organizations typically weathered the economic challenges with greater resilience, maintaining commitments to workers, communities, and ecological systems despite financial pressures. Analysis revealed that this resilience stemmed from structural differences rather than just values or intentions. Regenerative businesses had typically developed more diverse revenue streams, stronger community relationships, and less dependence on global supply chains. Their longer planning horizons had led to investments in resource efficiency and ecological health that reduced vulnerability to disruption, and their more equitable distribution of benefits had built reserves of goodwill that supported them through challenging periods. Harvard Business School professor Elena Markova, who had been studying our federation model for several years, published influential research on this phenomenon. What we're observing isn't just a different approach to business management, she wrote. It's the emergence of a distinct economic logic, one organized around regenerating rather than depleting the living systems upon which all prosperity ultimately depends. This framing resonated deeply with our experience. The journey that had begun with my simple desire to grow food in a small apartment had evolved into an exploration of fundamentally different ways of organizing economic activity. Approaches that could generate human well-being while restoring rather than degrading ecological systems. As these ideas gained traction, our family found ourselves increasingly invited into policy discussions about economic transition. The governor of Oregon asked us to co-chair a commission on regenerative economic development. The European Union sought our input on circular economy initiatives. The United Nations requested our participation in sustainable development planning. These opportunities presented both possibilities and pitfalls. On one hand, policy engagement offered potential to accelerate systemic change beyond what individual businesses could achieve. On the other, political processes often reduced complex living systems to oversimplified metrics and regulations. After extensive family discussion, we developed a distinctive approach to policy engagement. Rather than advocating for specific regulations or incentives, we focused on creating conditions for diverse regenerative innovations to emerge and thrive. This meant supporting policy frameworks that distributed economic agency more widely, valued ecosystem services appropriately, and allowed longer-term planning horizons. Most importantly, we insisted that policy development include the voices of those directly engaged in regenerative practices: farmers, craftspeople, indigenous land stewards, and family business owners. Their experiential knowledge, we argued, was essential for designing systems that could work in real-world contexts rather than just theoretical models. This approach sometimes frustrated conventional policymakers accustomed to standardized solutions and centralized implementation. But it resonated with a growing movement of local officials, regional planners, and national policy innovators seeking alternatives to economic development models that had failed to deliver prosperity while accelerating ecological degradation. Through these engagements, we witnessed the beginning of what might be called a regenerative governance movement, efforts to reimagine not just business models, but the broader economic and political systems in which they operated. These experiments ranged from bioregional economic planning in California to community-directed development funds in Kenya to cross-border watershed governance in Europe. While vastly different in context and structure, these initiatives shared core principles with our federation approach: distributing economic agency rather than concentrating it, embedding decisions in local ecological and cultural contexts, and designing for long-term regeneration rather than short-term extraction. As our 10th anniversary approached, we decided to commemorate this milestone by gathering representatives from across our now global network for a week-long Regenerative Futures Summit in Portland. Rather than a traditional business conference, focused on our company's achievements, we designed the event as a collaborative exploration of pathways toward regenerative economies. Over 500 participants from 42 countries converged on our headquarters: Federation family businesses, transition catalysts, policy innovators, indigenous knowledge keepers, and corporate leaders engaged in regenerative transformation. The energy was palpable as people exchanged insights, formed new collaborations, and developed strategies for accelerating regenerative approaches in their diverse contexts. The summit culminated in a celebration held in EcoBloom's main atrium, which we had transformed into a living demonstration of regenerative design principles. Growing systems from every participating region created a global garden that illustrated both ecological diversity and collaborative possibility. Standing before this remarkable gathering, I felt an overwhelming sense of how far we had come from the skeptical family dinner, where my plant hobby had been dismissed as just another passing phase. The journey had been neither straight nor easy, but it had led to something far more meaningful than conventional success. A decade ago, I began. I was just a frustrated apartment dweller trying to grow fresh herbs in a tiny urban space. My family thought it was just another hobbyist phase. None of us could have imagined where that simple desire to reconnect with growing things would lead. I gestured to my family members, now engaged in conversations throughout the room with Federation partners from around the world. The true miracle wasn't proving them wrong about my business potential. It was discovering how our different gifts could combine to create something none of us could have built alone. David's architectural vision had translated ecological principles into physical spaces that enabled new relationships between people and natural systems. My father's financial expertise had developed economic structures that supported long-term stewardship rather than short-term extraction. Emma's communication talents had made complex regenerative concepts accessible and compelling to diverse audiences. And my mother's artistic sensibility had ensured that everything we created maintained beauty and cultural depth alongside practical functionality. What we've built together isn't just a successful company or even a federation of businesses, I continued. It's a demonstration that another way is possible, that human ingenuity and enterprise can be organized around regenerating rather than depleting the living systems that sustain us. Looking out at the gathered community, representatives of thousands of families and businesses engaged in this work worldwide, I felt a profound sense of both accomplishment and humility. What had begun as my individual entrepreneurial journey had evolved into a collective exploration of how business could serve life rather than extracting from it. The applause that followed wasn't just for me or even for EcoBloom, but for the possibility we collectively represented, that economic activity could be reorganized around principles of reciprocity, relationship, and regeneration rather than extraction, exploitation, and depletion. As the summit concluded, our family gathered in my rooftop garden where EcoBloom's journey had begun. The space had evolved over the years into a living laboratory where innovative growing systems enabled abundant food production in limited urban space. What had started as a few containers of herbs now produced hundreds of pounds of vegetables annually, while serving as a research center for urban agriculture innovation. Could you have imagined this? David asked, gesturing toward the Portland skyline where EcoBloom's headquarters stood prominently among the city's towers. That your plant hobby would change all our lives so completely? Not in my wildest dreams, I admitted. I just wanted to grow food without chemicals in my apartment. My father chuckled. The most profound innovations often start that way, not with grand visions of changing the world, but with authentic desires to solve specific problems in our immediate environment. And then ripple outward, Emma added, touching lives you never imagined reaching. My mother, who had perhaps undergone the most remarkable transformation of all, from concerned parent worried about my career stability to internationally recognized design innovator, nodded thoughtfully. The lesson for me has been about recognizing potential in ideas, circumstances, but most importantly, in people. We so often underestimate what's possible when passion connects with purpose. As evening settled over the city, I reflected on our extraordinary journey from skepticism to global impact. The family that had once dismissed my small business venture had not only joined that venture, but helped transform it into something none of us alone could have created. David, once the condescending older brother concerned about my business, naivety, had become an innovative collaborator whose architectural vision had literally built the physical manifestation of our shared mission. My father, the traditional businessman worried about financial security, had pioneered economic models that supported regenerative practices across our global networks. Emma, who had once mocked my phases, had become a visionary communicator, connecting our message with audiences worldwide. And my mother, who had worried most about my stability, had discovered her own previously untapped talents as a designer and cultural bridge builder. As for me, the urban gardener seeking connection to growing things, I had found not just that connection, but a pathway to help others discover it too. My desire to nurture plants had expanded into a mission to nurture a different kind of economic relationship, one that recognized the interdependence of human and ecological well-being. The next phase of our journey began to take shape in the following months with the establishment of the Regenerative Economy Institute, an educational and research center dedicated to developing and disseminating regenerative economic approaches. Based in Portland but with collaborative hubs in Marrakesh, Bangalore, Kyoto, and Nairobi, the Institute would formalize what we had learned through experience and make it accessible to wider audiences. David would lead the design of these physical spaces, creating living laboratories where regenerative principles could be experienced rather than just intellectually understood. My father would develop educational programs on regenerative finance and investment. Emma would direct communication strategies to make these complex concepts accessible to diverse audiences. And my mother would focus on integrating cultural wisdom with contemporary innovation, ensuring that economic development strengthened rather than eroded cultural heritage. My own role evolved toward what might be called regenerative entrepreneurship, supporting new ventures explicitly designed to restore ecological and social systems while generating sustainable livelihoods. The investment fund we established provided not just financial capital, but mentorship and federation connections for entrepreneurs developing regenerative solutions to local and global challenges. As our influence expanded, we inevitably faced criticism. Traditional economists questioned the scalability of regenerative approaches. Corporate interests dismissed them as idealistic. Some environmental activists critiqued any market-based solutions as inherently compromised. We neither ignored these criticisms nor became defensive about them, instead inviting critics into dialogue about the practical challenges of creating economic systems that served both human and ecological well-being. Many of our most valuable innovations emerged from engaging seriously with these critiques, refining our approaches to address legitimate concerns while maintaining core regenerative principles. By our 15th anniversary, the global network of regenerative enterprises connected through our various initiatives encompassed over 4,000 businesses across 76 countries. Collectively, they represented a growing ecosystem of enterprises, demonstrating that prosperity could be generated while healing rather than harming the living systems on which all economies ultimately depend. On the anniversary of that first skeptical family dinner where my plant hobby had been dismissed, I invited my family to a special gathering at our original home. The garage workshop where I'd built my first prototypes had been preserved as a reminder of our origins. Looking at the humble tools and sketches still displayed there, I felt a wave of gratitude for the journey we'd traveled together. "We all thought we were helping you build a business," my father said, raising a glass of homemade elderflower cordial harvested from our rooftop garden. "But you were actually helping us discover who we could become." My mother nodded, her eyes bright with emotion. "The greatest gift wasn't the success or recognition, but finding purpose that aligned our individual talents with something meaningful." As we moved to the dinner table, set with vegetables from our garden and surrounded by the living walls that had once seemed so impractical, I realized the true miracle of our journey. The family that had laughed at my small business venture hadn't just ended up working in my corporation. They had become essential co-creators of something far more significant than any of us had imagined. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.